Not all light novel adaptations are bad. I just want to say this right now before going any further. I would be lying if I said I haven't seen some fantastic light novel adaptations, and sometimes some of the best anime can be light novel adaptations. But unfortunately, that aside, there are a lot of issues that these anime end up falling prey to. Hello everyone, this is the RPG Monger, and today, with more and more light novels being adapted with every season, I want to address the problems I have noticed with a lot of them. There are a lot of things that get adapted into anime. Some can be adapted quite fluidly and give you the same experience as you would with the original material. Like manga, for example, adapt the best in my opinion, with its format being practically made for anime at times, while other mediums require a bit of extra effort to turn out okay. So for starters, what is a light novel? Well, to put it simply, light novels are a type of Japanese novel who, like a certain other medium that comes to mind, targets the young adult demographic, basically middle and high school students. So far, just thinking about it with no prior knowledge, how would light novel adaptations be any different from manga adaptations and whatnot? I mean, they're both just telling a story, right? Well, that would have to be where you're mistaken, as the storytelling techniques in manga and light novels are really quite different, as you must think about it like this. Ignoring all of the anime aspects, as a novel, to make characters feel real and fleshed out, you're gonna have to have a lot of internal dialogue. And with this internal dialogue, when it comes time to adapt the novel into an anime, having it translate from paper to screen is a tad bit tricky, as if you left it all in, the anime would be very bland, but if you take most of it out, then the characters won't have any, well, character whatsoever. Since, like I said, a lot of the character development will take place in this internal dialogue. And unfortunately, what will end up happening for a majority of the time is the anime will sacrifice a lot of this internal dialogue, thus resulting in flat protagonists that only serve the anime with mild escapism. Though that is all icing on the cake, that is one of the most detrimental things to these types of anime. Pacing. I hate to harken back to it, but it is just such a good well-known example. Sword Art Online is a perfect specimen of being a major victim of this exact issue, with all of its characters ending up way more 2D than ever. As stated earlier, it takes quite a bit of effort to make a solid light novel adaptation, all the while taking account for all the little details surrounding the novel. And don't get me wrong, there have been some great adaptations in the past, like Re:Zero, Boogie Pop Phantom, and quite a few other noteworthy anime. But unfortunately, for every one of these, come 100 magical school anime and cheesy harems. But I don't want to get too off track here. How exactly is the pacing of a light novel adaptation any different from a manga adaptation? Well, it comes down to the action. In a manga of just about any genre, scenes will have action semi-constantly, whether it be puns and jokes or intense fights. Light novels, on the other hand, are the opposite, as you must realize that at their core, they are just novels. 90% of the time, the pacing will be focused on dialogue, both inner and outward, instead of near constant battles. With manga, the scenes are already laid out for you in picture, so slapping that into an anime is very easy. But with a light novel, you have to figure out a balance between action and dialogue all on your own, leaving a lot of room for error. Because if you just try to adapt a light novel like you would a manga, then the general audience would lose all interest whatsoever, and the anime would end up resembling a visual novel instead. But looking past all of that, one of the largest gripes I see so many people express about all of these light novel adaptations are that there is barely any creativity involved with any of them. And while there are good ones out there, like I said, I just can't argue that there are so many adaptations that are completely uninspired and feel like mass-produced copies of the same thing. If any come to mind, I'd say there are two prominent types of anime that come from these bleak clones. The, oh golly gee, wouldn't you look at that, I fell down a insert random object here, and now I'm trapped in an alternate universe filled with only girls who want to have all kinds of sex with me. What am I ever to do? Or the 5 years ago, this world was attacked by generic-looking alien robots, so now I have to attend a school filled with girls who somehow totally want to marry me. Mix and match all of those traits and you'll have yourself a majority of all the bad light novel adaptations out there. Not to mention, it will be the same few studios actually making these anime, thus making making it very obvious what anime were light novels and what anime weren't due to the generic art style and animation. It really is unfortunate, as with the sheer magnitude of these kinds of anime being birthed from the nether regions of the anime industry, people's perceptions will in turn be warped into classifying all anime by just these generic adaptations. I'm sure that a lot of people who proclaim that all modern anime are garbage gained their views due to them seeing all these anime taking over some seasons. To be honest, if that was my first impression of modern anime, I'd probably think exactly the same. Though with all of that said, how about I give you some examples? So, have you ever heard of the Asterisk Wars? Well, if you have, then I'm sure you have an idea of what I'm going to be talking about. This anime is the prime specimen of pretty much everything you can do wrong adapting a light novel. With world building that is completely forgotten about in a matter of episodes, along with the protagonist's motivation, everything is just about as exciting as editing the audio for this exact video. And honestly, that is even more exciting compared to that. It really wouldn't be a stretch to say that every bad trait light novel adaptations tend to have can be found in Asterisk Wars, like the protagonist accidentally walking in on a girl changing in the first few minutes of the first episode. And that's never been done before, right guys? With the human equivalent of exposition as a side character and a harem that is continuously expanding into the next season, yes, this got a second season, I'd say that if you end up watching this anime, from that point on, you have basically already seen just about every anime like it. But now, with the absolutely worst case scenario being Asterisk Wars, I want to talk about a light novel adaptation that really shows what happens when you have good directing for these kinds of anime. Alright, and keep in mind that this is more my opinion than anything, so I really don't expect for you to agree with me, but I have to hand it to ReZero for being one of the most recent light novel adaptations to not fall into all of the traps laid out by its predecessors. So if you only watched the first episode of ReZero, you would be understandably wary, as it is in fact yet another trapped in a fantasy world, and the protagonist is, you guessed it, an otaku. So starting out, things aren't looking too great, but then out of left field, we have a very interesting plot device of dying and returning to save points, so to speak. This gimmick elevates this anime by a lot, and really makes the adaptation what it is, because without it, I can say that this anime would be nowhere as good. And thankfully, unlike a lot of anime similar to it, even though when people die, it can be reversed by the protagonist dying again to return to a point before their death, the deaths actually affect the protagonist and his personality, serving as a way to flesh him out a whole lot more. The side characters, however, are pretty much the kind you would expect from an adaptation like this, honestly, though they aren't anything that hurts the story too much, and some are still pretty memorable. To prevent me from gushing about this anime for too long though, I'll just say that this anime is the ultimate poster child of what good directing can do to a light novel adaptation. Now, after all of that, I have one final hard truth to share with you all. Besides all of what I just said, do you want to know why some of these light novel adaptations just feel so lackluster with near to no effort in them at all? Well, it's because just by the anime existing, it has already done its job, because the main goal of all of these light novel adaptations in the end is just to promote the light novel itself. In the end, it all comes back to money, doesn't it? So, some final thoughts before my outro. Great light novel adaptations are quite possible, but to have them, you need to not be lazy in any department and have the director really put his expertise to work. Only then will we get more fantastic light novel adaptations. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, do subscribe, and today's cool thing of the day is Danganronpa in general, as I just completed all of the games and finished all of the anime, thus leading me to a state where I just cannot stop thinking about it. Oh, and just because I feel like it, here's a quick mini essay about why you shouldn't watch the Danganronpa 1 anime, cause, ugh. Have you ever wanted to watch something where nearly all of the things that made the original source material great be stripped away only to leave the bare bones version of itself behind? Well, then the Danganronpa anime is for you, because cramming that game into 12 episodes does not do it any form of justice. Please just play the game for yourself. It's such a better way of experiencing it. So that being said, I'm the RPG Monger, and don't forget that each and every one of you are fantastic.